Yes.
Yeah, okay. I got close. All right, so give me another hint, because I'm pretty close to it now. I feel like I'm sniffing it.
It's something that very few people do anymore.
Something that very few people do. Actually talk to people?
Use common sense.
Use common sense. Investigate the facts.
Talk to people, yes, you're close. You're close. You were close on the first one.
You called someone.
Yes.
Oh.
Very few people
How
pick up the
novel.
phone these days anymore. I'm getting closer and closer. All right. You called someone about something that you saw on Twitter.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. Give me a hint.
Let's just say I thought it was too good to be true, but it wasn't. And the status of this person is significant.
Too good to be true.
Hello, cool people.
Hello.
Mr. Wimpy.
Hello,
Hey.
Wimpy.
I need to set everyone's expectations, so you can kick me out now if you like. I'm in a new location on a different laptop with a very cheap headset.
You know
so
what?
If this is
You know what?
not broadcastable,
I could tell at hello, and I didn't care. It's good to have you.
It's all right, is it?
Yes.
Beautiful as ever.
I'd say it's just another flavor of Wimpy. I like it, actually.
However, the other parameter to take into consideration is I'm extremely drunk right now.
Oh,
That's even better.
Well, I am en route. I am not extremely drunk yet, but I am en route. So
Charging
So
up.
this means you get to spill some secrets about your distro. Does that...
No, I think that for the benefit of the listeners, we won't do another Mate or Ubuntu Mate expose this week. I think we've bored them to tears over the last 5 weeks. They've heard enough about that.
However, I can't help myself. And it's funny. It's like the last few weeks of you and I talking about this accumulated to me being able to describe it all in about 4 sentences on Linux Action News this week. And
I appreciated the coverage.
Did
that
you?
Was really
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, that was great.
I hoped it met expectations because I felt like I was able to
spot on.
distill a lot of our conversations into a few key phrases to get the point across.
Yeah, you totally did.
Good.
Okay. All right. So you want to continue?
Yeah, okay. So you called somebody based on something that you observed on Twitter. Am I right in that range so far?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a security-related thing?
Is it Brian Lunduke being a total asshole about HTTPS by any chance?
Totally
Did I
dancing
make
around that
that
issue
too
today.
wrong?
Totally
Definitely not a
dancing.
security person. Definitely not
Okay.
a security person.
Okay. So Brian Lunduke
God,
is
Brian Lunduke.
It's gonna
disqualified.
become a thing. Just call the magician. YouTube, come on.
Somebody, is it
The
some...
most self-validating moment on Twitter ever today.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just glorious.
Yeah. So, okay, JJ, is it somebody who was wrong, or is it somebody who is...
The magician.
talking
They
about
were
London.
wrong for sure.
Well, no, so JJ is trying to get me to figure out what he did today. What I have figured out so far is that he saw something on Twitter, he observed it, and instead of tweeting back at them like a jackass, he actually picked up the phone and called somebody about what he saw on Twitter, but I haven't figured out what it is yet. I don't know what it
It's
is.
a
He didn't call
significant
Twitter.
person.
He didn't call Twitter.
Oh, that's a good question, JJ. Did you call Twitter itself, the corporation?
No.
Okay.
It's the individual.
Okay, the individual that tweeted, yeah. And they're of note, as you say, right?
Yes, significant. They're not independent. Well, they're slightly above independent, but if you heard the name, you would know it if you were a YouTube user.
PewDiePie.
It's a
No.
magician.
Is it Philip DeFranco?
No.
Okay. Give me a range here. Because, like YouTube is a big range.
Okay, narrowing it down significantly. Diamond Club Network,
Okay. Brian Brushwood.
yes.
Really? I got it! You called Brian Brushwood today.
Yes,
Wow.
he actually posted his number on Twitter just so that he could test his voicemail.
And I think I got that in less than 20 questions. I think maybe 20-ish. I think I got there. That was pretty good. So what did you talk to Brian Brushwood about?
Just like curious about like, hey, you actually did this and like how you doing and like I sort of left off with like hope you have a scamming day.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like Brian. Brian Brushwood seems like a pretty hard-working dude that is able to sort of jump in and have something funny to say, regardless of the kind of show he's on, a tech show or a lifestyle show like Diamond Club, whatever. What was it called?
Diamond Club Network.
What did they call the show back in the day though when it was on Twit? That's what I was trying to remember.
Night Attack?
Night Attack, yeah.
I wasn't around during that time, but I do know Brian Brushwood from Scam School and all that, so during the Revision 3 days. And actually, my first podcast that I ever listened to was Techzilla on Revision 3.
Really?
During the Veronica Belmont era.
Yeah. Boy, I remember. Revision 3's had a lot of changes over the years, huh?
Yeah, it's gone down
kidding.
the tubes after that Discovery acquisition.
Yeah, it is. Neon Popey. I like that. That's nice. That's
Hello.
He's been here last week on Neon.
Yeah.
Unless
So
you just...
last week I was using Neon because, you wanted me to.
Mm-hmm.
This week I'm using it because the NVMe drive in my main laptop has corrupted.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm having to reinstall. Yeah. So
Does
I've
Linux have
decided.
trim support?
Have you guys noticed that NVMe drive seems to die more than any other kind of disk that you've ever had?
I
Maybe.
mean, it makes-
This is the only NVMe drive in my house.
Oh,
and
okay.
yes, it's failed. So yes, I have a 100% failure rate.
I mean, I have like
it's significantly expensive. It's the first gen of this type of one of the first gen of this type of product, and also it's like experimental at this point still.
I just feel like I have like really cheap, shitty, crucial SSDs that I
Yep.
bought like 4 years ago that are
But
still
they're
working.
stable.
I
They're like
totally
more
the
than-
same.
They're like they're beyond testing.
Yeah.
I have drives from every manufacturer, all of them, in various machines, and they've all outlived this NVMe drive. Now,
Yeah.
to be fair, I don't know that the drive has actually failed. It's the root drive, not my home folder, so I'm less concerned about it. And I've done a reinstall on it, and I'm going to try it out. See if it will live on. In fact, SmartCTL doesn't work with NVMe drives. It says on their wiki that version 6.5 and above works with NVMe, but there's some
What?
new protocols needed
What?
on NVME drives.
No.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah. They need to address
probably the
NVMe
only-
drives in a different way than SCSI or whatever other protocols that they used. But I ran SmartCTL -I and then the NVMe drive, and it went, what the hell is this?
Huh.
I have no idea.
You know, I guess I have the strong sense that NVMe drives are probably like everything else in the tech industry. Everybody has their own experience. Steve-O in the chat room says he's on his 5th drive and none of them have failed
Wow.
yet. I know, right? And whereas for me, I probably have had 5 total ever, and I've replaced 3 of them now after failure. So my
NVMe or SSD?
No,
general?
NVMe, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, my personal experience is they've just died faster. Now,
but how heavy have you used those drives? Because
new. You know
the
what? They
write-up-
were no. That's what's weird, JJ, is they were all almost new, and in every single case, it was from an OEM, either a laptop manufacturer or like the Intel NUC.
Ah,
Well, I've got like 2 NVMe drives and both died over the course of, I think, 1.5 years.
Really?
So,
Wow.
yeah, it's not that great.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is all anecdotal, right? But it does feel like all of us in this room have had a higher failure rate with NVMe than regular SSD
totally.
or spinning
Yeah.
rest. Yeah.
how good is trim support in Linux though? Like, is it like significantly different than what the Windows implementation
It's up to
is?
snuff. No, it's up to snuff now. There was a period where it's like the dark ages, and it was manual tweaks in different file systems. But generally across the board now in the modern file systems, it's well supported.
Yeah. The best trim support, the greatest trim support. People tell me.
So as part of the reinstall, I've done a clean install of 1604, and my question was going to be, should I use Nouveau, because it's got an NVIDIA GPU, should I use Nouveau, given it's a 3-screen, multiple
yeah.
display port?
Yeah.
But Linux has answered that question for me by dropping me to a shell when I try and boot
So
the
just
thing.
no
So
go at all, really.
Nope.
Interesting. You know what? That is particularly interesting to me because I am thinking about adding very, very, very strongly now, considering adding a 3rd DisplayPort monitor. And you said they were all DisplayPort?
So there's the internal monitor because it's a laptop.
Okay.
And
Right.
2 external
Display
DisplayPort.
ports.
And when I boot it up, I get 4 Nouveau messages on the screen about some timeout or something. Now, if I unplug the external monitors and boot again, I think the internal, even on a live CD, it doesn't work. But now that I've installed it, I think if I unplug the external displays and just have the internal single panel, it boots and gets me to a desktop. Now, it could be that I'm just out of date, and if I just upgrade, I'll get new packages and everything will be magically working, and I'll do that while we're on the show, and I'll report back later, okay?
Okay. This sounds a good
it's like
post show right there.
So it's like the Gen 2 challenge, except with production hardware, and it's better than Gen 2.
I don't know. So Marius, I don't have anything particularly slotted for the news this week. Is there anything you in particular are keen to talk about this week since you're here?
Snaps.
Well, obviously about snaps, but no, I've just noticed that I haven't had a chance to tune in live for the last
awesome.
Yeah, pretty much since last time I was on as a guest, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to join again, and I'm looking forward to the news and to Poppy and
I really,
Martin
you know
talking
what?
about snaps.
I know it is not always easy for all of you to make the time to be here on
No
the Tuesday.
kidding.
We really do appreciate it,
Yeah.
even if I don't get a chance to say it every single week. So thank you, Marius. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really do appreciate it because it makes the show better. And
Hey,
I love talking about your guys'
Marius.
stuff. Yeah.
Marius, you sound awesome. What version of Mumble are you using?
Wait,
Funny
is
you
this an
ask,
inside
Alan.
joke?
What a company man right there.
I'm using
Inside joke?
I'm using Mumble 1.3.0 because I'm using the snap from the Edge channel.
Very nice.
Checks
I'm
in the
using
post.
1.2.
Checks in the post, yeah.
All right, I'll be right back. I got to catch up with Wimpy, so I got to go pour myself a beverage, and then we'll start.
How do I do that? I want 1, 3, whatever.
No, nobody can catch
It's a snap.
people
That's what
now.
Mario said. It's a snap. But for some reason, whenever I use IRC in the snap, it always seems to crash.
Well, I'm running the snap. I'm running from stable though, I guess.
Ooh,
I think it's
so if you do,
I think it's pseudo snap refresh, correct?
so if you do snap refresh, Mumble -- edge, you'll get 1.3. Then disconnect, reconnect, and you'll be on 1.3.
Oh snap! Oh yeah!
Whoa. Crud.
Well played. Well
I'm
played.
having some Bats and Raven flashbacks right now.
Hello, Dan. By the way.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Yeah, good. Lovely to
Oh,
see
we have
your
two Dans.
beautiful face here.
I love that Dan is here every week now. This is
Me
brilliant.
too.
I love that you told me I should come here every week because
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Now, I'm not going to be humble, and I'm not going to deny that happened, but I'm pleased that you took my advice and you came here, because apart from anything, I used to enjoy our occasional encounters in random conferences around the world, and it's good to have a chat with you more frequently.
I just tweeted the other day how I wish that I could go out to the pub with you guys all the time because that is the
Oh my
funnest thing ever.
Yeah,
So,
It was
uh,
enjoyable in New York, wasn't it?
we are
That was
much
great
fun.
fun.
Yes, we do pay attention to the
Yes.
IRC. The IRC is asking if we pay attention to them. Yes, we do.
I don't.
Yeah, but it's funny because I remember HexChat keeping on crashing whenever I use the snap version of it.
I do at times wonder if it's just like if the Discord experiment is over and we should switch back to IRC.
No,
But
no,
Yeah.
I don't think
No.
so.
I know it's one of those things where the genie's out of the bottle now. I feel like.
I mean, I just realized my mic problem. I fixed my mic problems because I'm on another Discord server where I use my mic a lot, and my audio issues seem to have resolved from there. So
Yeah.
So
yeah.
for another podcast, I mentioned on their community website, Bad Voltage, that they don't have a good real-time chat system.
Yeah.
They have an IRC channel,
Right, and they have the forum.
but it's dead, right? Nobody's in the IRC channel. And so I mentioned, hey, you guys should think about having a real-time chat thing. Other podcasts use Telegram or Discord or Slack or whatever. And there was a heated debate, and they eventually spun up a Slack channel, and it's been super active. There's
So they
loads of people
decided to
in
go with
there.
Slack, huh?
Yeah. Mainly because Jono will only use Slack,
Yeah.
refuses to use Telegram.
The
won't
community
use
guy.
anything
The
else.
community guy. How
So-
funny is
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
How great is
That
that?
guy.
To
That
take
Slack
a
is too
phrase from
businessy.
Jono, single origin coffee drinking hipster, now lives in the Bay Area.
Yeah, all about the kale.
Yeah, we totally
Yeah.
converted Jono. I mean, we really took that guy and we made him one of our own here on the West Coast.
Yeah, a few more years and the accent will be gone.
but
No, he's gotta
unfortunately,
keep
Slack
that.
is too businessy. Unfortunately, Slack is too businessy for this type of content.
You know,
No, it works really well.
I agree.
So there's the Bad Voltage Slack it's quite. I mean, it's obviously part of the people who are in there. It's any social arena is like predominantly based upon who's in there, and the people who are in there are quite pally, quite friendly.
So
Same people
with
who
the-
were
with
in the
the,
Radio
uh,
IRC years ago.
what I feel like what the Popey, the community guy, is trying to say there is there's a selective pedigree in there in a way. It's like a selective choice area of your community, and I'm putting this bluntly, and I'm not saying that this is what Chris endorses, but I'm just saying bluntly, it's likely people that are working because they already have a Slack account. They're already involved with another project. They probably have an income. They may commute. I mean, there's all these things, like you could divide them into different chunks. And it turns out these people tend to be a bit more centrist on their opinions about things in technology. And they tend to lend to better, more back and forth types of conversation, which tend to enrich and really add to a community. And so when you hyper slice down to something like Slack, you're almost hand selecting a very narrow spectrum of your community, which has its benefits. Some great discourse can happen because there can be some really robust conversation within that narrow spectrum, and it can be very respectful conversation. And that can be very rewarding, especially from a creator standpoint. But it is not the entire conversation. You know, like we have Discord, we have IRC, we have Mumble, we have all Reddit, Telegram. We have all these different outlets on Jupiter Broadcasting, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, they're all having very different conversations.
I'm totally coming around to the whole Slack thing. Like, myself and Wimpy joined the elementary Slack many, many moons ago in order to have a conversation with Dan and the other guys at elementary. And then recently, Dan wanted to mention something to us, so he just highlighted us in there. And I got this little ping somewhere on a desktop and saw a notification from Dan. And it was very easy for him to notify us of something that was interesting to us happening in their project. And we didn't have to go and hunt down the message, and he didn't have to go and hunt down us. We just joined his Slack at some point in the past, and he pinged us, and we got it. It was great.
Yeah, I have to say, and that's not unique to Slack, because I see the same thing in Telegram and other places as well. And if you use IRC in the right way, by the way, that's IRC Cloud, then you get those benefits as well.
Yeah, very fair. I mean, you could say Popey may have been in one of Dan's IRC channels, and Dan could have highlighted him here. And if all of Popey's notifications and mobile apps and whatnot were oriented around that may have worked as well. The thing is that IRC Cloud is sort of backfilling that functionality where Slack launched with that functionality. True,
but Dan posted a link to something which had an image in it, and in Slack I saw a screenshot embedded in Slack, and I
didn't have to click anything.
No, I got the message straight away about what he was talking about, and I was like, yep, that's great.
Yeah, the intake,
it was lovely.
Yeah, the speed of intake of information is actually really useful. Wes and I use it all the time for prepping this show and TechSnap.
That is true.
So Popey, I believe your Twitter account is most famous for calling out the vast memory consumption of Slack compared to IRC. Discuss.
That is the single most popular tweet I have ever tweeted, is the one where I bitched about the fact that Slack takes huge amounts of RAM, whereas I could sit in an IRC channel and it not. But I'll counter that with, I have been significantly more engaged with more people on Slack over the last year than I have on IRC. I've found Slack way easier to jump in and out of conversations with people. However, IRC Cloud has also made that really easy on IRC.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, in that somebody who until about 3 or 4 months ago was using Hex Chat and an IRC bouncer in a VPS. I now use an, in air quotes, heavyweight Electron application in the guise of IRC Cloud Desktop, and I have all of my IRC happening there. And you know what? I get all of that stuff reflected on the desktop
but the
mobile,
is,
and it's just easy.
Yep.
I'm doing this on a machine that has 64 gigs of RAM.
Ooh,
right?
You build for it.
That's unreasonable.
Wow.
Like, there are people
who makes a laptop with 64 gigs of RAM these days?
Space money right there, it sounds like.
MSI does.
I feel bad because there are people who are excluded from this community because they can't, Telnet or Gopher or Netcat or whatever the old school way of connecting to people was. They can't necessarily use these modern high bandwidth, high memory usage, high CPU usage applications.
I feel the same way.
You need to use outdated bandwidth.
You know what? That's why the good Lord constantly keeps inventing different IRC bridges, Popey. So they can just keep trucking along on IRC.
Can I give you an update to my 1604 system?
Yeah.
I just did a dist upgrade and rebooted, and then I got my login screen and I just plugged in the 2 external displays, and I'm running Nouveau, and I've got all three displays.
That's awesome.
So I'm feeling pretty happy right now.
Nice. All right. Well, on that note, we should start the show.
Oh yeah, we should.
Dan, glad to see you. I have your Medium post, actually Cassidy's, but the Elementary OS Medium post slotted for just after the Ting spot. So let's talk about it. So sort of prepare yourselves for that. I feel like this is one of those Medium posts too. You'll have to go look in the link. I'll try to remember to put a link in the Discord when we get to it. You could just look at the screenshots, and Cassidy does a successful job of saying why. Whoa! Who is that? Who's got that? Who has that?
Drop the beat.
That was intense. You could look at the screenshots, and it's really fucking remarkable how far Elementary OS has come. So anyways, but it turns out those stupid crazy sons of bitches are revving their version from 0.5 or 0.4 to 5.0. They're going from skipping right 1.23.
It's
so,
a new wide world.
Idea. Somebody must have influenced that.
Oh, I gotta get the bell ready for that. Anyways, so we'll talk to Dan. I don't know, Dan, are you there? Or did you go away, Dan? Maybe Dan went to go get a drink and he'll be back. But that's your warning. Maybe somebody ping Dan. Has anybody got Dan on a back channel?
Yeah.
Wait. I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Good. All right.
I upgraded to this new mumble, and now everything's different. I don't know what I'm doing.
Ooh.
It sounds a little off, too.
Does it? Does it sound bad?
It sounds
sound
like the
deeper.
Yeah, 1 octave off.
I'm snappy for this.
It's kind of funny, but people might
You
think
sound stoned.
people will think you're really fucking baked right now. If we go on there. Which, I mean, fair enough if you are, but I feel like you could come on air and sound less baked if you were baked.
No, I'm not baked. How do I?
Maybe that's the problem.
I need that as a clip. Somebody get that from the YouTube stream. No, I'm not baked.
You could not sound more like a Valley Boy right now, Dan.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
It's all the extra
totally need to
confinement
keep
of
it like
snaps.
It's good. It's really good, Dan. Dan, you
I
are
wish I could hear this.
This is the best. Don't change.
You know, if you remind me, I'll send you a link to the live stream recording because this is really funny. It's good. You sound good too. Let's see, Dan. Just before you go, will you say welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show?
Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show, dude.
I love that you owned it.
Man.
You owned it. All right, you guys, somebody out there, please clip that for me. I will use that in the future on the soundboard.
Amazing.
Well, I don't know what to do, though.
Guy.
I mean, oh, man. I feel like we just peaked, though. I feel like we should just wrap it up
The
right
show's
there.
done. That's it. Thanks for coming
Yeah,
this week.
DigitalOcean Linux Academy ting. See ya. Good night. Yeah, I don't know, Dan. I mean, do you have the
Try the veal.
do you have the regular version available? I just don't even know what to do. It's so
Let
great.
me.
Are you sure he isn't sick or anything?
I don't know. It's so great. I love
This
this.
was a
Wes has
feature
gotta
I
step away.
added to the snap of Mumble that said, if username equals Dan Rabbit, then baked plus plus.
How do you downgrade a snap?
There you go.
That sounded
There we
better.
go.
You sound
You're
better
back
now.
to normal.
Oh,
What'd you do?
I just closed it and reopened it.
Oh, well,
What the heck?
problem solved.
Pigged it.
Dick.
Good solution.
Oh, man. Well, there goes my fun. Okay. Well, that was good, though. Thank you. That might be the best thing since I slowed down Leo Laporte bitching about Linux.
Right.
Also, I'd like to point out this is not a snap thing. I've had exactly the same thing happen to me in the past, and much hilarity was had by everyone listening except for me, who was completely bamboozled by the hilarity that was happening.
Yeah. I actually, the one that's even more embarrassing is the Skype problem, where it makes you sound like a chipmunk. That's even more embarrassing because, that's like at least when Dan got turned down an octave, he had some gravitas, right?
Yep, right.
When you get turned into a chipmunk, you just sound ridiculous.
Nobody takes you seriously.
All right, guys, here we go. I'm gonna get us started because hashtag we got to record something. That's a really long hashtag. don't use that. All right, here we go. It is the Unplugged program, and it is episode 236. Yeah? Right? Is that correct by your math? All right, and it begins in a 3. In a 2. This is Linux Unplugged, episode 236 for February 13th, 2018. Oh, welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's reporting back from the front lines of the desktop. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
Hello, Wes. I'm very excited about today's show.
We've got a ton of great stuff.
We do. We have some follow-up items that are quite choice if you had an opportunity to listen to 235, but there's a big embarrassing story for Apple this week, and us open source enthusiasts can't help but laugh a little bit. Turns out Razer, not so interested in supporting Linux after all.
No.
Maybe put off those plans for a laptop, but KDE's got you covered with a new Slimbook 2. We'll take a look at that. And then Mr. Foray is here. Mr. Foray from the esteemed Elementary OS project to tell us about why the hell they're jumping from 0.4 to 5.0. What kind of gumption?
A whole new world.
We're going to figure that out. Plus, last Friday, since we gathered here together, I went down to Microsoft. I visited the 3rd floor of one of the swankiest offices I've ever been in, and I asked them all of the questions. Everything from, literally, are you trying to kill Ubuntu, to why the hell are you open sourcing .NET Core and PowerShell?
Wow.
Yeah, and they just let me ask whatever question I want. I'm going to play some of that for you here on the show. Talk about Azure and Linux and about where that's going, and the super awkward position that it seems Microsoft has found themselves in with Windows. Plus, we will talk about our Plasma Challenge. We'll do a little check-in on the Plasma Challenge and see where everybody's at, see who's moving on, see who's sticking around. There's tons coming up. So let's not go a moment further without saying holler at our Mumble Room. Time-appropriate greetings, Virtual Lug. Hip, hip.
What's up?
Hello. Hello.
Oh, feck.
Welcome to BSD Unplugged.
What? Get that guy out of here. Who let him in here? All right, guys. Well, we have so much to get into this week. And I have it all opened up in a tab on Firefox. This is by the way, just totally random. But I don't know. I'm week 4 into Firefox now, version 58 right now.
I never thought I'd hear you say it.
Yeah. This is the 3rd or 4th Unplugged with no Chrome. No Chrome.
How's it going? I mean, you're still here. You don't seem to be pulling your hair out.
I think my favorite feature is how Firefox restores tabs. Instead of opening a new window and then populating that window with all of these random-ass tabs, it just resumes all of the tabs in the window that I have open. And the reason why I like that is because I can do it while my browser is on camera, and you have no idea I just did that. Just all silently in the background without lagging out my browser, without lagging out my OS.
And broadcaster's tip for you.
I know, and my battery life's way better too. Anyways, totally random. And also random this week, I thought we'd start with kind of an embarrassing story for Apple.
Ugh.
They had some forced open source disclosure this week. Did you see this? The iBoot firmware. Yeah, they call it iBoot.
Of course. What else would you call it?
Anything but iBoot, to be honest with you. Anything, actually, but iBoot would be what I'd call it.
Well, U-boot was taken, so.
Anyways, it sounds like an intern or somebody at the level of an intern posted Apple's super secret firmware source code onto GitHub for whatever reason. They like the jail cell. And within hours, within about a day or so, Apple got a DMCA complaint filed with the GitHub company. But it's sort of no going back on this kind of thing. Once this thing is out there, there's really no taking it back. And you got to wonder if maybe jailbreakers and hackers can use this stuff. And what's weird is Apple's statement. Apple responded with a comment, something about, we do not rely on the obscurity of our source code to enforce its security.
Oh.
Yeah. Like one of those, boom.
We were just happy to have it as a layer there for a while.
Yeah. For as long as we could.
Yeah, it sounded like the person involved was pressured from some of the community that wanted information about, how to develop jailbreaks and other such applications.
iBoot.
And then it's leaked further than that.
It's a second stage bootloader, Wes. It's just so, I don't know. There's something about all of Apple's stuff. You got the Secure Enclave, you got the iBoot, you got the T2 chip in the iMac Pro. It really feels like Apple is circling in on jailbreakers and the Hackintosh community just to give them the old traditional Apple butt wiener in about another year. Like, it's all of the things are lining up right now. The T2 chip is going to be something that will undoubtedly ship in new MacBook Pros and the new Mac Pro. And that is literally a iPhone system on a chip that verifies the cryptographic integrity of the Mac operating system.
I mean, that's where their heart's been for a long time now.
There's no way the Hackintosh community is going to have a quick remedy to that. That's going to be easy for anybody. And that's just gonna populate across all of the Mac platform. And then you combine it with all of the other techniques that they're doing, like with signing of applications and the Mac App Store. And it's just the Hackintosh community can't have more than 2 years. So maybe
I don't think you're wrong, and a lot of this is in the name of security, and a lot of it can really be understood.
Yeah, it really, honestly,
we complain about things that some of this actually does solve, but from our perspective, as the 1% techie crowd, it's not.
But okay, but if put yourself in the position of maybe you're one of these companies that's really buddy with IBM, and IBM now preaches the gospel of Apple, and they come in and they say replace all of your Windows 7 and Windows XP machines with iPads and MacBooks.
I already did that. It's fine. It's easy.
Okay, sorry. Anyways, that's just so funny. Like, what are you going to do, right? Anyways, so you go in there, you replace all your machines with Macs, because that's cheap. And then you really want to get to the point where you can verify that the operating system is secure and the applications are secure. And so it's kind of within the corporation's best interest that Apple does lock this shit down.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Like,
you could even say the Hackintosh community isn't even a factor in their decision-making process.
Well, they're not large. Why would it be? I think it's really just been perhaps Apple being nice or not overly, not really caring about it up to this point. But if it gets in the way of some of their security and marketing objectives, then they really have no reason to let them benefit.
I wonder if we could figure out, like, wouldn't it be amazing if somebody could figure out, like, well, it's going to be 1 in 15 Hackintosh users become desktop Linux users or something like that.
That would be.
Anyways, here's kind of a fun thing about Apple using the DMCA to take down the code off of GitHub. Under penalty of perjury, that on the case of Apple, that means that the source code has to be legit. Because if Apple is using the DMCA to take down that source code and then they go to court over it and it turns out it's not legitimately their source code, they're screwed. In other words, that means the source code that now tons and tons and tons and tons of people have copies of is legitimate source code because they use the DMCA, which confirms it's legitimate, which is... It's funny how that kind of works, right?
You're really enjoying yourself on this one.
I am.
It's nice to see you happy.
Thank you. Because, then I reflect on another laptop company like Razer, who was offered the source code to update firmwares on Razer laptops, and they said, no thanks. This is, of course, by one of the folks involved with the Linux vendor firmware project where they are shipping firmware updates via GNOME software and other mechanisms. We've talked about it a lot on this show. One of my favorite things.
Absolutely.
And so one of the developers emailed Razer and said, what could I do to help you start shipping your firmware updates? How about I will write you code from scratch, example code that you could actually just take and use that would be ready to go. In fact, how about I do all of the work, I hook everything up for you, you just got to give me some of the details and it's good to go. And nothing happens. And nothing happens. And then eventually an email comes back and the email says, we've discussed your offer with a dedicated team and we're thankful for your enthusiasm and for the good idea. But I'm afraid I also have to let you know that at this moment in time, our support for software is only focused on Windows and Mac. I.e., you've done all the hard work, you've gotten everything ready for us, you're actually even solving a problem for us and some of our customers, but we can't be bothered to give you the time of day.
I've got an alternative point of view on this.
I'd love to hear it.
So, ODMs or OEMs, such as Razer, who go to ODMs, may have to enter into contracts which prevents the redistribution of firmware and BIOS images. And this may be a well-crafted, polite reply to rebuttal the fact that they don't have an arrangement with their ODM that enables them to redistribute these BIOS and firmware images.
So you're saying it's a way of answering the question without kind of crapping on their partner, saying, well, our partner's agreement doesn't allow us to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, I don't know, I don't have any insight into who Razer's ODMs are, but some of the other Linux-focused OEMs certainly do fall into this category where, you know, they are not permitted to redistribute these images, and consequently, you know, doing this work is not open to them.
Right. So to be clear, to sort of clarify what you're saying is based on your experience and my experience in communicating with certain Linux-first hardware vendors that are reshipping upstream original equipment manufacturers' hardware, like perhaps, say, a Clevo. There is an agreement in place in which, as part of that, because it's been around, these have been around for years now, that part of that agreement is you cannot directly redistribute our firmwares to your, or any kind of like updates to the firmware too, to your customers. They have to be distributed directly from us. And then there's different iterations of this agreement that might say, well, under these conditions, you can distribute firmware, or under these other conditions, you can distribute the firmware once we've signed off on it. Like, there's a bunch of changes to it, but that's essentially what you're saying.
Exactly that, because if you enter into an agreement with, say, Clevo, and as the equipment manufacturer, you are requesting some customizations to BIOS and firmware, those are not something that Clevo want to be reshared and redistributed because it's specific to your contractual obligations.
Right, and the customization of that firmware is sort of the product that they are part of the product that they are selling back to the reseller. So the Clevo is going into some sort of business arrangement with these resellers and saying, all right, we will make these changes. You go validate this on your hardware, and then come back to us with the changes you want. And then Clevo makes the changes at the firmware level, and then the seller tests that again and validates it and sends back more suggestions, and it's a back and forth process. And then eventually they have a custom firmware that Clevo has created for that particular vendor. And that's part of the value that Clevo offers.
Exactly. And this is also why you sometimes see that the Linux device manufacturers are a little bit behind on offering certain chipsets of products, because they have to go through this validation and tweaking and customization exercise for their products in order to deliver them in a out-of-the-box Linux-compatible way.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Unfortunate, but
so one of the devices that is probably kind of along the same line that I at first was sort of skeptical of, but now we're seeing a second iteration of, and I'm kind of starting to get it now, is the KDE Slimbook, and now we have the KDE Slimbook 2. And it's not like it's going to like blow you away with the hardware specs. It's a 13.3-inch screen. It does have an SSD. You can get it with a pretty fast 2.7 gigahertz i7 CPU, which will turbo boost up to 3.5 gigahertz. And you can get up to 16 gigs of RAM. You know, but again, it's not going to blow you away in terms of performance. But it is one of these situations where it's, how do you describe something like this, Wes, where a project can focus in on a singular target? It's not like they're designing the hardware, but it gives them sort of like
they have like a reference platform they can really focus
on. Like a narrow set of variables, right?
Yes.
And that's what's interesting about the Slimbook, is because I feel like this could be a harbinger for what we could see down the road as it becomes more available for people to ship upstream OEM hardware, make slight modifications at the hardware and firmware level, and then have open source projects hyper-target that for a few months in development and then release it. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing this with some other hardware. And I think this is an interesting idea, because when I first started getting into Linux, you would buy like a 6 CD set for $65.
Yes.
And you'd go home with a box and a book and like a like a whole bunch of CDs where you can install your Linux. And that was the thing you bought. But that's obviously gone away with ISO downloads and whatnot. But this is almost like a new version of it today. Like if I was a student and I was really passionate about Linux and open source and the Plasma desktop, I'm pretty sure I would aspire to a piece of hardware like this. Like this would be sort of that thing that I would want to get. Like, I would go mow those lawns. I would do what it would take. I would go get that side job so that way I could get the perfect Plasma desktop laptop.
It's been tweaked for it, designed for it, thought about, cared for.
Yeah. So it's nice to see them. Go ahead.
This dovetails with the previous conversation, right, about working with ODMs in order to make the necessary customizations that the device that ships out of the box works with the distribution or operating system that is pre-installed. So I'm a big fan of this because this is the step change that Linux on the desktop needs. Downloading ISOs and sticking them on USB sticks and installing them on whatever you happen to buy is all very well and good, but actually being able to buy devices pre-installed, pre-configured with the operating system that you want to use, that's how you really step up adoption.
It also interests me the tighter coupling between the desktop maker and the actual hardware details, and not having one layer of distributor or system in the middle there. Maybe there's some real world concerns that will get addressed more quickly.
It's funny, and this could just be Softpedia, but in the screenshots on Softpedia, I'm seeing screenshots of Elementary OS and the GNOME desktop. Oh, and there's Mate right there.
There's even a Unity below.
The Slimbook guys are very good. While they have a specific model that's available with KDE, they support all of the flavors.
Of course, right? And that's what's kind of nice when you're buying a Slimbook to run Plasma, but you can run everything else.
It's all just Linux.
It is, right?
You can also buy a Slimbook without Plasma if you want to.
Do you? Before we move on, Producer Michael, do you have anything else you want to mention about the Slimbook thing? Because I've just sort of covered on a high level, but it kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen one in person, but with the version 2, it kind of feels like it's essentially like a Galago. Am I right about that?
They're not. It's not the same ODM, but
okay.
It is very.
Oh, it's similar. Not. It's not.
I don't think they have Clevo now.
Oh, it looks pretty nice though.
We were fortunate enough that they were at Slimbook were at UbuCon Europe in Paris in September last year, and they had all of their devices out, and there was lots of drooling and pouring at the quality of their devices, and I think this version 2 looks particularly interesting. And I'd just to plug another podcast, if Curry happens, which it might, I would desperately love to see one of these in for review on the Ubuntu podcast with KDE Neon.
Me too. I would like to see that.
It's a sick looking laptop. It reminds me of Macs, but Macs have decent looking hardware, and this one looks like you can get a better powerful machine roughly about the same price and still looks like a Mac. So hey, there you go.
Now, do you have any idea, Rodden, about how much might go up towards the Plasma desktop or the KDE project? Is there any kind of do you know if there's any financial contribution? Am I giving anything towards the project?
There is a partnership. I don't know what the percentages are,
okay,
but I do know that they do something with it. I could find out, but I don't know offhand.
Yeah, all right. I just think this would probably be great for anybody that just wants a machine dedicated to run KDE Neon. Just go for it. And it looks like great hardware. I do hope to one day see my hands on it, maybe at a conference or something like that, or if they ever have enough units to send out for review. I think that'd be pretty.
It's a nice looking machine.
Pretty sweet. I'm still shopping for you, Wes. I'm still shopping.
That's right, you are.
You have a first gen XPS 13? Is that a first gen? No, it's a second gen. Second gen. All right. Well, that's understandable. Is that an i5 or an i7?
i5.
An i5, huh? Man.
I mean, it's really just a terminal and a web browser.
Yeah, but you get a shit ton of work done with that. That's not your daily driver.
No, it is not.
Okay, so your daily driver is a desktop?
Yeah, I have a desktop replacement at home and a real desktop.
So
at
like a
work.
big laptop at home, and then a desktop at work. Yeah, okay.
And then this
All
is
right.
the portable version.
Good man.
But
you know,
you're right; it does need replacing.
a little bit. So I'm shopping for you all the time. I'm just always
appreciate
looking
that.
for you. You know, I just got to make sure you get the right thing, Wes. I got to make sure.
It's got to be right. Yeah,
The only reason is because I got to sit here and stare at it every single week.
exactly. You have incentive.
Yeah. You know what else? I'm going to mention Ting right now. Linux.ting.com. It's our mobile service provider. It's the whole network's mobile service provider. It's just a smarter way to do mobile because your average Ting bill is just $23 per phone per month. It's pay for what you use wireless. However much you talk, however much you text, and however much data you use. You're like a ninja with this stuff too, Wes. You know that?
Oh yeah, as much as you want.
I've noticed that too. Like when Wes gets here, he's like, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi? I gotta get on the Wi-Fi here." I'm like, "What's going on over there?" I look over at Wes, and then boom, he like syncs up all his stuff once he gets on the Wi-Fi.
I'm not an animal. I mean, come on, I need the Wi-Fi.
A gentleman Wi-Fi caller. They got nationwide coverage, CDMA and GSM networks, no contracts, no early termination fee, and you can try Ting totally risk-free. With CDMA and GSM too, that means there's lots you can bring over in terms of hardware to the Ting network. It's incredible. You know, I went from paying over $140 a month to paying around $40 a month. That means I can buy like a new laptop every couple of years. Yeah, it's super great. Start by going to linux.ting.com, support this show, take $25 off a Ting device, or get $25 in service credit if you bring a device. Linux.ting.com, and a big thank you to Ting. Big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Unplugged program. Linux.ting.com. I just think Dan just can't stay out of the news. Elementary OS every single damn week is doing something that's causing some bit of discussion. And maybe this is just what happens when a project gets to a certain size. Like every single thing they do generates discussion. But Dan joins us this week to discuss the crazy, outlandish idea that they dare go from version 0.4 to version 5.0 with the next release, version Juno.
That's a big jump.
So, Dan, you've just gone off the deep end, and you're just jumping numbers like OpenSUSE now. Dan, I don't hear you. Hold on. Dan, where'd you go? Hey, Dan.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, no. Oh, no. It's all screwed up again, Dan. It's all screwed up again.
No, I'm gone again. Wait, hold on. Let me log off and log back on.
Okay. Okay.
You're fine. He's muted.
I love it.
Adventures in podcasting.
Oh, man. All right. So,
how about now?
Okay.
Am I good now?
No, you still screwed up.
Why?
You're fine, Dan. He's muted you.
No, he's not. No, it's that he's.
I can hear Dan, so.
No, we can hear him. He's just a lower octave. So say something, Dan.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm saying something.
Yeah, you see how he doesn't sound right. It's a problem with this mumble install.
Wow.
Yeah, I can hear him.
What if I just talk really high pitched?
That's not so bad. It's closer.
My gosh,
yeah.
Dan.
You are pretty
Try
excited.
out KD Neon, see if that works.
Damn. What can we? So last time you just closed mumble, right? And then
I did. I just did that. I closed it and I reopened it. And
anybody else got any suggestions? What we can do? What about what about a reboot and come back in? Is that too detrimental to your current state?
Oh, Elementary OS reboots really fast, Chris.
Is that right?
LOL.
That solves it.
There he goes. Well, I guess Beard gets the first half of this show a little early.
It's a little bit of an edit there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Magic.
This is why you tune in live, right? So you get the whole
exactly.
thing. Get the whole damn
Now we
thing.
just vamp.
I had a suspicion that when we came back to Dan, that might happen. I had a suspicion. Where did Wimpy go? Where the hell did Wimpy go?
Don't you know nothing? Nothing. Change is inevitable, Chris.
What is he doing up there? What's he doing up there?
He also broke his audio.
So that's not a mumble thing at that point.
Hello. Hi. No, I don't think I wonder what's going on. I don't know. Hello, Dan. Now say something.
Hi.
Oh, you sound
Am I
great.
normal now?
Yeah, you sound
Excellent.
great.
You are normal.
All right, Dan. So I'll hit record again, and then so I asked just like what's going on with the big version jump, and wherever you feel like jumping in there, you could if you wanted to just pick it up with we're actually something like we don't normally even talk about the new release, but we're kind of getting ready. You could kind of start there, and it'd probably be a clean edit.
Tell me when to go.
We are go for record, sir. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so I mean, we were just thinking about, what if we took that 0 and then took it off, then didn't do that?
What if we didn't do that? Oh, well, all right. That sounds good. Moving on then.
Bold thinking, Dan.
No, honestly, there's kind of two reasons, right? One is a marketing reason, and one is kind of an organizational reason. And we kept getting a lot of people saying, "Oh, when is Elementary OS going to get out of beta? Like, you guys are still in beta." We keep hearing like people saying, "Oh, Elementary OS is in beta." And so it was really confusing for people to have that leading 0 in there. So we thought, okay, well, we got to version bump that, right? We got to move that up into at least 1.0 territory so people will stop thinking this is a beta product.
Honestly, I feel like you got there with Freya, really.
Yeah,
which was 0.3.
Right, and it's been quite an evolution, to be honest. And we are kind of holding off on the 1.0 because we wanted to make sure that we had, I don't know if control is the right word, but that it at least influence in everything that the user sees and touches, that we're able to fix the issues that our users report to us. And so we're way more there than we were before. And this Juno release has the most elementary stuff in it out of any release before.
Ah, that's it.
As far as our desktop environment and all the apps we ship,
Right.
and now we have an application ecosystem that people are developing apps for Elementary OS. So it's like a huge shift from where we were when we started out.
It's the stuff that actually makes the platform, to be frank about it. And I like this post. I don't know if you guys intended it for this, but if I had never heard of Elementary OS and all of a sudden I saw, why do these cocky sons of bitches want money from me? If I read this post, I would be compelled to donate lots of money, because within if you just look at the damn screenshots, it is so clear. Like, here, Wes, I'm going to do, you ready for this, Wes? I'm going to do a little, so here is, if we start here at the beginning, there's Elementary OS Jupiter 0.1, and it looks like a GTK GNOME 2 respin.
No problems here, but yeah.
Then you get to version 0.2, and you're like, oh, okay, it's GTK 3, it's got a nice theme going for it, but by the time you get to Freya 0.3, you have a whole lot of Elementary OS features, including a whole bunch of nice styling, animations, a real clear visual communication.
Definitely.
You have their own application launcher, their own settings panels, a do not disturb system with notifications. Like, it's clearly its own product by 0.3. And then when you look at Loki 0.4, one of the things that strikes me about Loki is it's all of the stuff I just said, plus kind of building on top of that a more refined look, clear path for third-party developers, style sheets, APIs. It honestly starts to become a platform by Loki, version 0.4, the current version. But the other thing that you guys have done with Loki that struck me, and maybe this was the case with Freya and I just didn't notice it, but it feels like Loki just keeps constantly getting better. Like, there's new stuff that just keeps coming to Loki. Like, there hasn't been like this big gap while I'm just waiting for the next version of Elementary, the next big drop. Because in this meantime, I am kind of waiting for that. But in the meantime, stuff has just kept coming down to Loki, like updates, like the App Center, for example, the updates, all of that stuff. It just is new in Loki, which has been the current release now for a while. And so you guys have legitimately built a platform. And I think when people say that, some people get triggered because it sounds like cloud, it sounds like vlog, it sounds like blog. It's one of these, it's a term, it's this nebulous term. But it's an app center, it's a design language, it's a clear path for developers.
It's the lack of nebulousness, right? Like,
exactly.
It is something concrete now.
Yeah. So, but I mean, not to belabor this point, but just because this is the thing that everybody's been talking about, why not just say 1.0?
Right, and the reason why not to go 1.0 is less marketing and more organizational. So that's kind of the other component of it. And what we're looking at is we want to try to bring everything into alignment with semantic versioning, so that we have, that major, minor, that whole thing going on. But what we have right now is a lot of version numbers throughout all of our different products that are misaligned, and some of them are more than 1.0. And so by just kind of removing that leading 0, then we can eventually get to a place where across the board, like all the APIs for our 5X series are 5X, and all the applications are 5X. Get everything all kind of aligned.
Very nice. It's a Windows 10 effort then.
I have no idea. Sure.
No, but I get what you're saying. You're saying developers can say, okay, so you have the 5.x version of this API support or of this application, so I know what I can target there. And then eventually down the road, it'll be 6X and 7X, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So the version number for all of our products aligns with that release.
Damn.
Very nice. Forward thinking.
Yeah, you're taking what I always compliment you guys. Here's the clear developer story. Here's how you target the platform. Here's the design language you use. In fact, here's a widget you can use to make it look like everything else. And now you're going to the next level and saying, here's the APIs that you can guarantee work.
Yeah, I mean, we're really trying to get to a point where that level of clarity permeates throughout the entirety of the stack, and not just with, it's clear for users to use applications, but it's clear for developers to write them as well.
Right, because 5.0 is going to mean it's going to mean what? It's going to mean GTK 3.22. It's going to mean high DPI. It's going to mean kernel Linux version something X. Yeah, I mean, so elementary 5.0 actually means GTK-X, kernel version X, systemd X, Xorg or Wayland X, doesn't it?
Yeah, right, because the new 5.0 release is going to be based, we're currently building it on the Ubuntu 18.04 LTS. So it does bring a hardware enablement stack and a ton of new APIs from all our upstreams as well.
Yeah, I mean that's the practical version of it. It's 5.0 is going to be 18.04 LTS, but developers won't even need to understand that esoteric differentiator. It'll just be 5.0 of the elementary OS platform has these capabilities. 6.0 has these capabilities.
But what's with the need of the .0 anyway? Is there any need for like a 0.5 release just for beta possibly, or anything like that?
Yeah, so what it is like basically the same like we did with Loki, where we had a 0.4 release and then we had 0.4.1. And what that was is it's a bump to a new hardware enablement stack or adding new major features or things like that. So we do have those minor revisions that we'll push out if we make it's a new ISO release. So it's something significant enough to trigger a new build, but not significant enough to break API.
Also, real quick, why did you name it after a very infamous film about a pregnant teenager?
Oh, Juno?
Or a moon.
It could be,
Jupiter.
or a city in Alaska. I mean, let's be honest.
So for our code names, we use the names of deities, and it turns out that the majority of the really nice sounding deity names are like Greek and Roman usually, and so we did a couple of Norse ones.
Yeah,
so,
the problem is I took a bunch of the solar system names with Jupiter Broadcasting, right? So
yeah.
Well, actually, not only does that make sense, Dan, but it goes deeper than I first understood. So I really appreciate you coming on and explaining it to me. Wow, that's great. I mean, that is so great because it clearly contributes to the developer story. Just as a super quick follow-up, if you could, how has how much has the 1 week reaction reeked for the announcement about charging for upgrades or attempting to charge for upgrades? Like now that you've had a week to marinate with it, how's that gone?
I think it's been really good. We've got a lot of really positive feedback and interesting comments from people. And
is interesting a way of saying controversial? Like really? Like how is it? Is it like, are you guys like pulling back at all, or does it feel like full steam ahead?
No, I mean interesting in terms of bringing up things that we were looking for people to bring up, like hey, what happens in this case, kind of thing. And by discussing it with other people and bringing it up, where we've had more plans to push into, okay, well now how does multi-machine work, or how does a fresh install work as opposed to an upgrade, or things like that, or like how. That was one of the major concerns that people brought up that we're currently working through is what happens if I want to transfer my purchases to another computer.
That seems like a huge problem to solve. I mean, that's the number one issue that I raised, and I've even gone on the record and said I'd be willing to pay a bit more if I knew that it would persist across all machines. But that seems like
it kind of be expected to be persistent.
It's kind of it almost is, right?
In this day and age,
because of other app stores. Yeah, I think that's a great point. But the technical limitation means you have to somehow track me across all my machines.
Yeah, so that's the major balance point, right? Is how do we set things up in a way that is convenient and adds these features that people want, but also in a way that is secure and respects your privacy?
Yeah. I do not envy that task, my friend.
Not in the least.
No, Wes and I cover that kind of stuff all the time on TechSnap, and it is a massive technical challenge. And if you ever want to talk about it, you know where to come, because we'd love to hear more about it. But I'm sure that's all down the road stuff. In the meantime, anything else to note about the Junos release or about the announcement about the bump? Anything like that?
Well, that wallpaper that I just made for the 5.0 beta is pretty fire. You can go check it out on our blog, and you should download that. And
nice.
Even if you're not running the beta, which you aren't because it doesn't exist in the public, you should just stick that wallpaper out there because I will. It's pretty sick.
That does look nice. Ooh. I think I will. Good call on that. I've been following with more and more interest, Dan, so I appreciate you stopping by. All right. Well, we'll have a link to all of that shenanigans in the show notes. Go check that out. I think it's going to be a big release. For a couple of years, 2 maybe. No, I don't know if it's 2 years. I don't know. I guess we stopped doing LAS in 2017. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think I don't know if you look at LAS, I think we kind of pulled back on reviews a year before that.
That's a good point. Yeah, you kind of did.
And right now, I've got the itch. I mean, so not only do we have a new version
Spring is coming up.
I know,
there's
right?
Distros to try.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's allergies.
Oh, well, that too. It's a nasty itch. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah, I call it Mint 19 right here. It's got a rash. No, I have a good feeling about some of the distro releases that are coming, because a lot of them are based on Ubuntu, which is going to be a major update soon, but a lot of them are also trying to differentiate. I've recently started following the Solus project again with a lot of close intensity. I don't know if Ike is just trying to lure me with his sweet siren song, but they're talking more and more about their Plasma version.
Ooh.
And there's just a lot of good releases. We just recently talked with the Fedora group and about Fedora Atomic and all of that. So there's just so much good stuff coming down the pipe. And it just means that you and I have a bunch of good stuff to talk about.
And a ton of great things to try.
Anyways, let's keep going. I got a chance to go down to Microsoft last Friday. And
have they turned you? I mean, should I be suspicious? Am I safe right here in the studio?
Do you like my Windows 10 system here? It's nice, isn't it? No, actually, in all fairness to them, they did not try to convert me to Windows 10 at all. So I got to give them credit for that. We will talk about that in just a moment, but first I want to talk about DigitalOcean. It's infrastructure on demand, super fast, really reliable infrastructure with 8 data centers all over the world. In fact, by the time you're listening to this, it could be more. That's why companies like Docker and Slack and GitLab and Tesla use DigitalOcean, and Jupiter Broadcasting as well. DigitalOcean.com. Go over there, create your account, and then use our promo code DO Unplugged. It's one word, and you'll get a $10 credit. You can spin up infrastructure on demand. It's one of the things that Wes and I do all the time for TechSnap, is when we're trying something out, like, how do we talk about this in a way that makes sense? Wes knows exactly. There's something we did recently. I don't want to say it. You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what
you know what I'm talking about. And it's like, well, we want to talk about this in a way where we have actual knowledge, like hands-on experience with it. So you just spin it up on a DigitalOcean droplet, you try it out.
Done.
I mean, we had that whole thing done within 10 minutes. And then we just played around for like the next 20 minutes just to see what we could do. It's so great because like you go from, I have this idea, to full production in minutes. You can get started in less than 55 seconds. And they have 99.99% uptime. If you want to deploy just the base system or an entire infrastructure, you can do it over at DigitalOcean.com. And they've just revamped their pricing. So it's just even more competitive. It's just ridiculous now. And they have mix and match droplets. So in the past, it was like you buy this droplet for this price. And now you can just mix and match like disk and CPU and RAM. Like it's going crazy. And then you combine that with block storage, which just shows up as like a dev SDA device on your Linux rig, or you can go next level and go with object storage, which is 100% compatible with like all of the S3 CMD type API command stuff, but it's on DigitalOcean infrastructure. So like really great backup programs on Linux and all of that stuff just works with DigitalOcean Spaces. It is so worth your time. And if you can go over there and use our promo code with the $10 credit.
Oh, that'll help.
Yeah, you can play around with your own custom spun backup system that just specifically hones in on your needs. DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code DO Unplugged and try it out. See what you can do. Hold on, Wes.
Breaking news.
Breaking news from the back office. You can also just do a little do.co/unplugged in the browser. Do.co.
It really couldn't be easier.
Do.co/unplugged in the browser. Hot in from the back office. Preloads with the promo code and all that s.
Just sign right up.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Mm-hmm. Try it out. DigitalOcean.com. Promo code DO Unplugged or do.co/unplugged. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Unplugged program. That was, I tell you what, going down to Microsoft stressed me out because this is why one of the main reasons I got out of IT contracting is
that right?
I have this really super weird anxiety about going to a certain place at a certain time when I have to navigate like I'm actually having a slight panic attack just telling you about this. I'm really.
Take it slow.
So I have this anxiety where if I need to be someplace that's like way south of Arlington at a certain time, and I have to like park somewhere and then navigate like a series
Especially
of buildings
you haven't been to.
Specifically, it comes up when I go to Amazon or Microsoft or T-Mobile. Like whenever I go to a multi-building campus and I have to be in a certain conference room at a certain time, and just like I've never been to that campus, so navigating it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm legitimately having a panic attack just telling you about this. And so that is how I spent my entire Friday last week. I spent the first half of the day having a panic attack, and then I spent the second half of the day going to Microsoft. And then once I'm on site, I am as cool as a cucumber. Legitimately, no anxiety. I am 100% comfortable.
So we just have to get you there.
Yeah, I just have to get there and like get to where I need to be. And once I'm where I need to be, and I have plenty of time, I'm completely comfortable. So I showed up an hour early.
You kind of have. I mean, with traffic and anything else. I mean, how else can you plan for that?
Yeah, and I had my lady Hadia come with me for emotional support because she's really good at navigating. When I'm totally anxious out, she'll do the driving, the navigating, the parking in the parking garage, and like all of that. That totally takes care of my anxiety and lets me just focus on the task at hand. And so she came with me to essentially be my emotional support partner. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't know what it is about these companies, but they give me this sense of anxiety because, like, when I go to meet other business owners or community members, like, we go to a bar or I go to their house or something like that.
Or they're standing behind the counter and you're like, oh, hi, you own the business.
It's a totally different thing. And so when you go to Microsoft's Bellevue campus, which I had never been, I've only been to the Redmond campus at Microsoft. It's like a totally different experience. So you park in the parking garage and you work your way up the elevator and you go across what they call the breezeway. And I have a picture of it on the video version if you're watching right now of the breezeway. And it feels like you're walking through an old Roman palace with marble everywhere, fountains, Gucci stores with gold walls and LED lights.
So that's why you look so nice today.
Yeah, it is full of stores that I think get one or two customers a day. I mean, this is a very ritzy place in Washington, and Microsoft has they have two buildings, and the building I was going to is a temporary building. They call it the Braven Building. And when I finally got there and I got past the Gucci stores and the Prava stores and the water fountains and the statues, and I got through the elevator and got to the third floor, I arrived at the reception desk.
Parking, get validated. Oh, okay, if I can see your ID.
And of course, I had to get the parking validated because that's what you do in Bellevue.
Right, absolutely.
But you know what was a little disorienting is the first thing that you see isn't the reception desk. It's funny. It's one of those things that's really, it just drove home to me. I'm obviously in a business filled with geeks. When you walk in through the main door, the first desk you see isn't reception. The first desk you see is tech support.
Seems sort of appropriate.
So you get there and you open up the glass doors and you see this huge desk and you walk up to it and you're like, I'm here to see. And before you get those words completely out of your mouth, you see IT, you see support, and you see guys that look just like you. And you go, this is tech support, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, reception's over there.
Like, we get this all the time.
So obviously for geeks. And so we get there, we check in, I get the parking validated. I'm sitting around in like these future space chairs that look like they're off the set of Star Trek Discovery.
Are you wearing any Linux swag?
I did, dude. I wore thank you for asking, I wore the last finale hoodie with the final last logo with the year. It's the shirt I'm actually wearing now, only with our full run year on it.
Okay, great.
And I wore the hoodie. But underneath it, I wore my nicest blue business dress shirt, button-down business shirt.
You're a professional.
And I wore nice slacks. So I was going for the corporate lifestyle reject look. So that way they could acknowledge and accept me, wouldn't feel off-put, but yet would understand I'm not one of them.
Right. You speak their language, but you're not a part of them.
Yeah, that's exactly. And so we're sitting around in these Star Trek Discovery future chairs, and you're looking over this marble promenade that has fountains and glass fixtures and the Gucci stores. And then behind us are these future lights that look like they might be the transporter room on the USS Discovery. And as I'm sitting there just sort of taking all of this in, Jeffrey's assistant walks up to us. I mean, after all, Jeffrey is a fellow at Microsoft. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
I need to take you up. Sorry, my hands are cold.
Oh, no problem.
Nice to meet
Will
you.
hang on to that for me?
Yes, I will.
I'll grab the other.
Oh, gee.
So I hand off the microphone to Hadia, and we go through several different layers of glass doors that she seems to authenticate with her badge.
Naturally.
And then the glass doors open, and then she says something to us that sort of stuck out, and I had to like think about it for a moment before we sat down, and before we did all of our conversation. She says to me and to Hadia, "Would you like to buy something to drink before we go into the conference room?" Not would you like something to drink?
Huh.
Would you like to buy something to drink? Now, my experience at the Redmond campus was on every floor, they just have like a store area where you can just go in and get anything you want for free. But this is a temporary building that they're only in for a couple of years. So they don't have the traditional Microsoft infrastructure. And it gives it like this small company feeling because they're not like regular Microsoft.
Yeah, we've got the soda machine out back if you need something.
So I turn around the corner and Hadia and I meet Jeffrey and Joey.
Thank you.
Hi.
Come get you.
Chris.
Hi,
Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey. Nice to meet you.
Joey. Nice
Hi,
to meet you.
Hadia. Nice to meet you. This is Hadia.
Hadia.
Hadia. Nice to meet you, Hadia.
Like quesadilla. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's really the only
Where
way
should we sit?
Where would you own the room?
Oh, well, okay then.
And Jeffrey might have been the most perfect person for us to talk to.
Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Snover. I'm a technical fellow at Microsoft.
He's been there for 18 years.
Wow.
And Joey also joined us. He's the PM for PowerShell. And what's great about both these guys is they're Linux guys.
I'm Joey Aiello, and I'm the program manager for PowerShell Core.
But while I was setting up for the interview, and so I apologize for the audio and some of the noise in the background, but we just had the recorder going. While we're setting up to start talking to them, Jeffrey tells me that 18 years ago, he never thought he'd work for Microsoft.
You know, I was reading your, or listening to your podcast about, they're doing this and this, and it's like, no, that's not
it. Okay, good.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good place to start.
Exactly.
I'll get
You
set up
give
for
us
recording.
way too much credit.
Oh, really? Oh, I see. See, I had some sort of master plan.
Yeah.
Well, I do tend to.
Yeah, that was the thing. When I started at the company, like the last thing I wanted to do was to come and work for Microsoft. You know, I thought them the evil evil empire. I knew all this, and then when I came and visited, you know, my joke was I never joined Microsoft. I joined this one executive. He was just an awesome exec, and then I got in here. And it's like, oh yeah, no, it's not malice. It's not evil. It's just people whose hair's on fire.
people whose hair is on fire, which totally echoes some of my other industry experience. And so I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Joey, the PowerShell project manager, says, oh, yeah, me too. I was a Gen 2 guy. I never thought I'd work at Microsoft.
It was the same for me.
Yeah.
Really? You come in from college, and I've been here almost 4 years, and it's.
You weren't thinking you'd be at Microsoft either?
No. But you come and meet a bunch of smart people, and everybody's solving problems, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just you realize very quickly, everything is always official. Right, it's like you see something come out, like an update or something, and it's like, oh, it's Microsoft, right? That like put this thing out, and then you're like,
the people behind
like,
it.
oh, it's just like there's 3 guys over there that just like did that, you know.
Yeah. Especially when it's a big company, you tend to think it's like, oh, it's a team of 1,000,
right?
It's a team of 2,000,
right?
Working on that.
Right, exactly. No, it's like Joe.
Wow. Yeah. It was really kind of interesting because I felt from them like they wanted to advocate their position, and I got a sense that's kind of why I was there. And the PowerShell team specifically, now Microsoft has open sourced a lot of things, including .NET Core, Visual Studio Code, and then PowerShell came along. And I think they knew that there would be a lot of skepticism in the Linux community. And they also knew that they had a long road ahead of them. But I got the sense that they were completely committed to it, and that's why I was there.
We just knew we were not going to be greeted as like liberators to the Linux community, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay,
how do we deal with that?
How do we get the tone right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do we get the culture right, both in the product and how we engage the,
we're still trying
community?
To figure it out.
Yeah,
and that's what the conversation was in Coder Radio. Like, so what is going on here?
So I kept having the conversation. I got them on mic. This is all just on the pre-setup while we were getting ready to go. I got them on mic, and I started to get a sense of why Microsoft is trying so hard. You can judge how successful they are with engaging open source community, with being a quote-unquote good Linux community citizen. But I got a real sense that there is something that's driving them. It's not just marketing. I got a sense that perhaps the situation is becoming such that one of their biggest moneymakers, Azure, is simply becoming a predominant Linux platform. And that's just the reality that they're in. And no matter how Microsoft spins the numbers, there's more and more Linux systems than Windows systems on Azure.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've seen, but on Azure, look, here's a reality. I mean, it's just you just look at the world and do the math, right? If we say Azure is the Windows cloud, okay, well then you're taking off a very large portion of the world. You're just saying, I'm not going to go get that market. That doesn't make any sense. And then you can't be a trusted supplier to those companies that said, I want a heterogeneous world. So we have been investing for years in great Linux support, and now that number of Linux VMs is almost equal to the number of Windows VMs.
That's impressive. Wow, I think the last number I heard from Azure was 30% or something like that, which is getting higher and higher.
Yeah, it's going higher fast.
And he does one of these like way higher, like gestures.
Yeah.
Like it's maybe more closer to 50-50. And Microsoft can't spin that any other way. They have to acknowledge that reality. So he said something in there that sounded like spin, but I got a better understanding of it. He said, we've invested for years in Linux. Well, what the does that mean, right?
Yeah, that's a very vague statement.
I went deeper on that in Coder Radio this week, and I kind of encourage you guys to go check that out. I know that's a super punt, and I apologize. But we just talk about the tools that people use for developing software deeper in Coder Radio. So in episode 296, Chris goes to Microsoft. They specifically Joey, who we haven't heard from yet, talks more about retooling their Windows-only team around Linux and all of that stuff, which was really interesting. So we do deep dive into how they made that transition. But I wanted to talk with you guys about the really super awkward spot that I was sensing that Microsoft is in. And I really appreciated what they couldn't say in this clip. I want you to listen with certain kinds of ears on. Microsoft, I think, this is Chris here speculating, but I think Microsoft has realized that the future is not on Windows. The hot action for the future is not Windows. Perhaps maybe they even have some insights into what a shit show Windows is that we don't have on the outside.
Yeah.
And so they fundamentally understand at a level that we can't even appreciate on the outside
of why Windows is not our future. I'm just going to speculate here for a moment. Maybe I'm wrong. But they seem to be in a very awkward position. They can't just come right out and crap on Windows and say, Microsoft is no longer about Windows anymore. Microsoft is all about open source and Linux, because they have 1 billion users on Windows who will go, well, what the hell, guys? What about us? At the same time, they can't come out and say Windows is the best thing ever, because they'll piss off all of the Linux and open source community, which is where they're trying to get to.
However, we've had some experience here, and basically what we want to do is to not try and give a signal on any platform. As much as possible, what we want to do is we want to support all the platforms that somebody wants at the same time, right? So we had an exec that had come from Sun, and they said, yeah, so we're so committed to Solaris, and people thought, well, we're not committed to Linux, and so we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to prove that we're committed to Linux. So we're going to do Linux a week before we release the Sun thing. He said, and then their entire customer base said, oh, so you're not committed to Solaris anymore. It's like, oh, yeah, you just got it wrong. Yeah, so we don't always get that right, but wherever we can, we're going to say, these are the platforms we want to support, and support them all at the same time.
And then I suppose right now, from a lot of our perspectives on the outside, it's a bit of spinning up to Visual Studio Code's out now, .NET's out, PowerShell is out. It seems like a bunch of catch-up, but what this really is going to just become the new normal.
Yes, that's right.
The new normal.
Wow.
So what is that? The new normal is they slowly bring a lot of things up to cross-platform over time. So PowerShell and OpenSSH come to Windows, and PowerShell comes to Linux and Mac, not because they just all of a sudden decided to flip a switch, but because they open sourced .NET Core, and then they rebase PowerShell Core on .NET Core. You see where we're going here?
I do.
And with that, after they've laid the groundwork for .NET and they've gotten developers on Git, and then once they've gotten developers understanding Git and taking pull requests and all of that, then they get them on Visual Studio Code. And once they have everybody on Visual Studio Code debugging the software, then they can launch PowerShell Core. And this, we go into more details in Coda Radio. But the thing that they said, which I thought was pretty remarkable, is PowerShell Core, the version that's on Windows and the version that's on Linux and the version that's on Mac, is replacing standard PowerShell on Windows. So no more PowerShell on Windows. I mean, it's going to be there. They're going to maintain it.
Right. Well, of course.
But the version that's shipping on Linux is the future of PowerShell Core. Do you see what I'm saying? Like PowerShell, the version that's on Windows, like the original version of PowerShell.
I'm Joey Aiello, and I'm the program manager for PowerShell Core.
And Joey here for PowerShell Core is the guy that's heading all of this up and helping them get ready to make this open source version to replace this version that's been shipping on only Windows for years.
It's been phenomenal, yeah. So we actually we're proud to state that in the release of PowerShell 6 that roughly half of the pull requests that came in for PowerShell 6 were from the community.
So they've open sourced PowerShell. They went with PowerShell Core 6, and they've had a pretty good engagement from the community. But I thought, this was, I don't know, it's almost too perfect. So I wanted to ask them a few other questions about it, and I wanted to get specifically into bugs. So I'm going to replay this clip from the beginning and taking a perspective of what about bugs? What about like people contributing issues back to PowerShell?
It's been phenomenal, yeah. So we actually we're proud to state that in the release of PowerShell 6 that roughly half of the pull requests that came in for PowerShell 6 were from the community. In particular, we had a ton of work done in the web commandlets, the invoke web request and REST method layer by one contributor in particular, Mark E. Krause. There's also been a number of guys, just sort of cleaning up the long tail. Like, this is one of the great things about open source, right? You have people who know they need these really big features and are highly experienced and are able to code up, all these custom REST method and authentication headers and proxy bypass and multi-part support and all these things in the web request layer. But then you have folks who say, hey, all your error messages still say Windows PowerShell, right? And someone who has a lot less coding experience is able to sort of jump into GitHub, make a contribution for the first time, scrub all these error messages and improve the product for everybody. And it's one of those things that we know is important, but that we'd probably not get around to, or if we did, something else would have to get sacrificed, right? And by having people who, the sort of Wikipedia approach, right, of like you have 1,000 people, fixing your typos, then you really end up with a much higher quality product. And we've seen a lot of that in PowerShell, and I think the that 50% PR community PR number is a testament to that.
Yeah, okay, so that is pretty good.
Yeah,
but I pushed Joey a little bit further. I'm like, okay, yeah, but there must have been some sort of esoteric, typical open source community moment. And Jeffrey and Joey kind of both smile and they look at each other and go, well, there was the very first issue that came in that happened to be a bit memorable. And it happened to be from the curl developer.
So we're all sort of very happy and patting each other on the back. And about 5 or 6 hours later, a pull request came in from none other than the creator of curl. I'm gonna get his name wrong, but first name's Daniel. Really awesome guy. We had an email exchange afterwards, and just super nice guy. But the gist of the pull request was simply to remove 2 aliases from PowerShell. So some years ago, PowerShell had used a bunch of aliases for some of the core commandlets in order to entice or make things more comfortable for Linux users, with no expectation at the time that PowerShell was going to ship on Linux. So, for instance, ls was an alias, as was dir for get child item, right, to get the directory listing, or even CD, right? So some of the aliases that were added were curl and wget, and those were there to draw users to invoke web request and invoke rest method. Well, the creator of curl, rightfully so, said, that's the name of my project. You're not invoking curl. Curl for Windows has been out for a very long time, and you're making things really hard for my users who have to tack on .exe in order to run curl for Windows. So now that you're open source, you're trying to be good guys, like add this back or remove this alias. And we responded in kind, saying, hey, this is totally agree with you. This is a breaking change. We got to follow our governance process here that we had, fortunately codified very explicitly, and said this is our process for breaking changes. And he was very amenable and understanding of that. But within a few minutes of having posted that pull request, it was now #1 on Hacker News. And we had GIFs and trolls, Michael Jackson eating popcorn, hundreds, like it took minutes to load in my browser, kind of thing. So we got a very good lesson very early on the importance of optics and how these things. It was these 2 aliases that really drove hundreds of people to our project. But ultimately, I think we took care of it in a amenable way, and we removed the aliases among a number of other aliases in PowerShell core. We decided to leave them in Windows PowerShell for some period of time because users were depending on them. It's now best practice not to use aliases in scripts so that you're not depending on them. But the nice epilogue, as we were saying to the story, was that curl is actually now available in Windows. So we need to go revisit that and in the next version of Windows we're shipping tar and curl. So we live in a brave new world.
Yeah,
for sure.
A brave new world that ships tar and curl in Windows.
Heck yeah.
I bonded with Joey. I mean, so Jeffrey, what impressed...
So that's where you got that pro license from.
Yeah,
I
right?
see.
What impressed me about Jeffrey is that he has been at Microsoft for 18 years. And we cover this in Coda Radio. Again, sorry, obnoxious plug, but he talks about how he went into Microsoft and created PowerShell with the intention of essentially trying to rip off some of the stuff you can do in Bash. Totally. He's like, I even wrote a blog post about it. I've always acknowledged this, and it turned out it failed horribly. And then he totally talks about why it didn't work on Windows, and it's super interesting because it's much more about where Linux is now with Journal CTL and all. It's a great talk. Obnoxious plug one more time. Go check out the whole interview, and because I really went down there for Coda Radio, and I grabbed that stuff for this show. Yeah, I went down there, so go check out Coda Radio 296, where we have more. But I love talking to those guys because neither one of them thought they'd be Microsoft employees, and then they ended up there. Jeffrey's been there for 18 years. Joey's been there for 4 years. And he and I were Gen 2 users at the same time, so we after we were done,
kindred spirits.
Yeah, we
there.
chatted about all of that and had a good chat. But JJ, I know you had some things you wanted to mention, and I wanted to open it up to the vlog for anybody else. But JJ, did you have something? I saw something go by that you wanted to start with, so I opened it up to you, sir.
So, me personally, I am a dual booter still at this moment, at this time in this conversation. And I also still pay attention to a lot of Windows news. And it's not really a surprise that Microsoft is embracing open source. Satya Nadella's, during the early days of Satya Nadella's tenure, he sort of emphasized the future is with devices, but not specifically Windows devices. And I do remember that presentation he had with that that iPhone with Microsoft services on it, and that was like a shock to probably a lot of Windows geeks. And also with the fact that Windows Mobile is not really a viable option at this point, and other stuff like that. And there's also talks about also with the future of Windows 10s, and also with the rumored Polaris devices, it seems that Windows seems to be less of a power user OS and more of a normal OS. But I'm not sure if Linux will take. I mean, Linux will probably take over the power users to those who really want it. There's still those enterprises who sort of are not looking at Linux at the moment, and I'm sort of it's sort of a mix.
So I couldn't put this in recording and play it as a clip, but the thing that I walked away with, the understanding that I managed to achieve, the meta understanding was, how do I put this in a way that's not insulting to myself? So a lot of the stuff that I have sort of been calculating as a master stroke by Microsoft to sort of embrace and extend Linux isn't so much that as it is the result of about 3.5 years of people that used to be suppressed that now have a little more leverage, and certain people were laid off and made room for folks like Joey about 4 years ago. And guys straight out of college that were running Gen 2 4 years ago were allowed to come into Microsoft and run things like the PowerShell group. And they did a bit of a changing of a guard. And there were people like Jeffrey, who's been there for 18 years, who were always kind of hip to, I'm coming here as a former Unix user and I want to bring Bash to Windows, which is where PowerShell came from. So he was already kind of hip to the future direction. So folks like him now have assistants and their own corner office and their own people working beneath them, and they can summon podcasters like me to their office.
Yeah,
because they hold way more authority than they did under Ballmer or Gates. And folks like Joey, who's 4 years out of college, are running the PowerShell core group now. And he's he's got people on his team where they run Macs. That's all they do is they use Macs. He's got a guy on his team who runs Arch. He's got plenty of users. We talk about people that are running Ubuntu because they're working on PowerShell, which is a shell, so they have to be using it every single day to work out the things that shells do differently on different operating systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also I would like to say that I do have a connection to I think the head of the Microsoft Graph, and he's a Linux user. He's an open source proponent and Linux user as well. Well, I'm not sure open source proponent, but he does use Linux.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's if the big secret about Microsoft isn't anything that we've speculated about. Like, the thing that we've missed is the dirty secret, the elephant in the room about Microsoft is they've moved beyond Windows before their customer base has.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right?
Very much so.
But they're still making money from it, so they can't say anything. And it's super awkward for them. And so, you go down there, and these guys are pretty enthusiastic about what they're doing, and they can't come right out and say Windows is the past. Because they'd be happy for people to continue using Windows for the next 25 years. Go ahead, they'll sell it to you.
Platforms.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll ship it on Windows, we'll ship it on the web, we'll ship it on the Mac, we'll ship it on Linux. We're happy to do it. They used a term that we go into more detail on Coder Radio, but they use a term called ambient Microsoft. Ambient Microsoft. They just want to be anywhere and everywhere that you might need them. And he said, Jeffrey, the mission that was communicated to him by Satya directly make it possible for our customers to do more with their computers, and our sales guys will figure out a way to make money from it. So that was the directive. Not make it work on Windows, not make it a platform lock-in. Figure out how to make them more money and get them to do more work with their computers, and our smart sales guys, who we pay way too much money to, will go out there and figure out a way to nickel and dime them for it.
Wow.
And so he's detached now from that. And that's, if you think about that, that's an interesting thing, because that's where PowerShell comes from on Linux. Because now Linux administrators from their Ubuntu desktop can manage with one script an Ubuntu box and 15 Linux servers and 15 Windows servers and 15 CentOS servers and 15 SUSE servers, right? And a handful of Macs. Like, all of these now can be managed from one script, and they take care of all of the communications between RPM and Debian, or all the different, little different like implementation layer things. If you're a Windows shop and you've got a bunch of SUSE systems and Ubuntu systems and CentOS systems, that's pretty valuable all of a sudden.
Or you buy someone else and they have those systems,
which is actually something that happens more often than we talk about.
Totally.
Then you start to understand, that's why it's ambient Microsoft. That's why they're open sourcing .NET Core and PowerShell. Because then all of a sudden, when you're coming from a huge Microsoft infrastructure, an on-premises setup that's really deep in Windows, you can use some of your investments in scripts to administer your systems, to set up users, to create databases, to set up patches. You can start to leverage that time across Linux systems, and it can be on an Ubuntu, a SUSE, a Fedora, CentOS machine. And the name attached to it, the brand attached to it, is Microsoft, which is about as damn good as Google, Apple, and Microsoft.
Yeah. And then whether you need new infrastructure, be it Linux or Windows, you'll reach for their cloud.
I'm not sure where I sit with all of this, but I do recognize from a position of somebody who was in the trenches trying to implement this stuff, and when somebody would come at you with, well, this is IBM Tivoli backup. It's made by IBM, so we should implement this. And then we did it, and it was the worst frickin' backup system we'd ever used. And then later on down the road, well, Microsoft recommends that you should upgrade an NT4 network to Windows 2000, and definitely don't use this Linux thing. And then that all of a sudden became a benchmark in which we were judged by. And it was this, you couldn't avoid the brand. Well, now that brand can be used to manage Linux systems. And they can be on premises, they can be in Azure Cloud, they can be on DigitalOcean. It doesn't matter. And they don't care. They don't care. They legitimately don't seem to care. If you want to run it on an Ubuntu box and you don't have any Windows systems on premises, but you want to use PowerShell, they're happy.
Go for it.
Yeah, they're good with it. Like, okay, we'll be there. We're ambient Microsoft now. It's really something.
Just like the rain, man. Just like the rain.
I don't know what to make of it. Yeah, they're basically taking the Pacific Northwest weather patterns, and applying it to the technology marketplace.
Structure too for the business. Instead of building what the salesmen sell, the salesmen are selling what you create.
Yeah.
I mean, it also leads to better products and all that from Microsoft with regards to like the Microsoft Garage experimenting on Android and iOS with many of their apps. Those seem to, and this sort of idea sort of stem from their mobile give up of Windows Mobile, I would say.
Yeah. I think after Windows Mobile kind of failed and Windows RT and all of that stuff, and then Satya Nadella takes over, there's just sort of this, all right, well, we'll figure out how to make money at doing this. And that's just sort of been the drive.
So I have a question. I'm actually seeing Microsoft moving away from like providing an ecosystem with their operating system to more something like providing infrastructure and projects regarding of software.
Yeah.
That runs maybe everywhere.
Right. I would agree with that sort of summarization. Yes.
Okay, but what about all the legacy software that is out there that relies on the Microsoft Windows 10 code base.
Then they're happy to keep making money from that too.
Yeah, sure, but that's definitely not something that will change in a few years.
No, I think that's
not going away that quickly.
I think that's why they're more than happy for the situation. That exact reason.
Yeah. And there's also the bridges such as.
Wait, hold on. Let producer Michael go.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that Microsoft is compartmentalized. So yeah, this one group might be, we want PowerShell to be everywhere. We want, Azure to have Linux, and .NET is open source and all that stuff. Yeah, but the other side is making Windows 10 and they're locking everything down.
Yeah, there's different. Exactly. There's different priorities. There's different fiefdoms. However, I did genuinely get the sense that what they're cooking, everybody else is smelling. Like it starts with like one or two projects, and then it's something else in the company, then something else, and it does seem to be a bit of a snowball effect. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're going to open source Microsoft Office.
Right, but the autonomy is interesting too, right? It's more about in some ways it's about like they weren't told no, like you want to make VS Code and Electron multi-platform, and you're not using Windows technology. Not a problem, and so that just gets fed back into the company.
Yeah, and now like when they write the debugger for .NET Core, instead of it being a Visual Studio only thing, it's something that they just sort of like open sourced. And there's like an Emacs plugin. You can do it in Vim, you can do it in Visual Studio Code, you can do it in Atom. Like it's just
right.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this approach, and I think it's going to make them just a crap ton of money.
Old extinguished thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And they're going to get rich. They're going to be one of the biggest moneymakers off of open source. Isn't that something? They've gone from cancer to this. I mean, it was deep, and think about this. We need to move on, but think about this. It was in the DNA of this company. Like Bill Gates goes to one of the computer clubs and says, "You're devaluing software by giving it away." He writes this letter, a manifesto, and says, "We've got to stop giving away software. We've got to charge for it." I mean, it's in the DNA of the company. And then Bill Gates moves on. He goes and becomes whatever he is now, and Ballmer takes over, and it's all about Windows everywhere. It's all about Windows everywhere, Windows first. And now here we are, and Linux is a cancer when Ballmer's running. And now here we are with Satya and the people that have sort of been reshuffled underneath Satya 3 or 4 years later. Definitely feels like a different message. What were you going to say?
Yeah, so it seems like Microsoft's got the Linux chemo in now.
Yeah, right. They did, right? Yeah. Nice. I mean, wherever we're at, I think one of the bigger commentaries is the Linux Foundation now will sell you a $300 course. A $300 course on administering Linux on Azure. LFS 205. It is a course from the Linux Foundation on using Linux on Azure. That's where we're at in 2018. Is the Linux Foundation is selling you a $300 course on that.
I'm signing up right now.
Whew! I mean, that is really, if that doesn't tell you where things have gotten in the last few years. So everybody's waiting around for it. I appreciate all you guys waiting. We're going to do our plasma check-in. Everybody, you're running it.
Yeah.
I'm running it. I've been updating like crazy.
Great.
Yeah? You even did too. Like, I thought you weren't going to update this. I don't know, for some reason, I thought you were like on a different version or something, but...
I thought I was too, but no, I've been keeping up better than I realized. Look at me.
I know. You know what, Wes? This is what happens. Wes either manages all his systems with like this centralized management platform that can handle millions of systems, or he's just apt-get updating like a maniac, and and then a little upgrade here and there, and who cares, right?
You know it.
I like how you roll, Wes. Well, so I've been trying out KDE Neon User Edition, and other folks like I think Popey and I know Noah have been trying out KDE Neon LTS Edition. Well, those evil planning sneaky jerks over at the Neon Project who have been setting all of you LTS users up for ages, preparing you for a big trick, have pulled out the rug from underneath you and devastated your lives by hiding the Neon LTS Edition. So I got to tell you, so every week there's a couple of stories that I get a bunch of feedback on, or like links.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this to stop any of it, because sometimes it's actually a very valuable data signal. So I'm not disparaging those of you who did this, but I got a lot of telegrams and tweets and emails this week about, hey, Chris, did you see what they're doing? Hey, did you see what they're doing, Chris? And they would send me the link to this blog post. It's short. It's one paragraph. It's one dense paragraph by Jonathan Riddle over at the Neon blog. And it says this. With the new Plasma LTS came an update to KDE Neon LTS Edition, and lots of people asking which edition to use and what the difference is. I'll say this, too, by the way. Once we announced the KDE Neon Plasma Challenge, the number one question, without any kind of close competitor, the number one question that we got was, are you doing the user edition or the LTS edition, and what's the difference? In fact, I would be willing to bet, Producer Michael, is that not one of the number one questions that's in the Telegram group and in the community is, what's the difference between the LTS edition and the user edition? Yes?
That's the number one question I get every time,
all the time
someone ever mentions Neon at all.
Yeah. And so I'm not surprised when I read that was the number one question that came into the project. And so they say this caused us to review the purpose of the LTS, and as a result, we've just hidden it from the download page. So I want to dig a little bit into this for a second, because it has caused some people to say, what's going on? Why is the project abandoning their LTS? What's going on, Wes? I don't know. Figure it out. Well, you know what? We have figured it out. We have. And we'll tell you more about it here in just a moment. But first, as we do here on the show, we got to pay the bills. We got to thank Linux Academy. And I got to thank everybody for signing up at Linux Academy. You might notice that we have the same sponsors here on this show from time to time. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. Have you noticed that?
Not at all.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, Wes.
No problem. I got your back.
Yeah.
Just like Linux Academy.
Yeah, they do, don't they? And here's why. We could spend our time researching show topics, contacting guests, building community, trying out different infrastructure items, or I could spend my time selling the show to different advertisers. And I could have mattresses on here. I could have food.
All the mattresses.
Hey, what about HelloFresh? Would you like to have some free food?
That does sound fresh.
Yeah, well, there you go. And what I've decided to do instead is I've decided to invest in certain sponsors that are genuine fits for our audience, like Linux Academy. I honestly know that all of us can use this service. I'm a subscriber, so I can say that with confidence. They give you advanced training tools to increase your skills and encourage critical thinking around everything about Linux. So think about that for a moment. That's where they start, right? That's where they start. So that's going to make you super competitive in the industry. And then they give you the tools to accomplish this, like hands-on labs, scenario-based labs. They'll spin up virtual machines if it's AWS or if it's a local Linux box. You can SSH into that and get a hands-on experience. They have human beings, actual instructors that can help you whenever you get stuck. They have self-paced in-depth video courses on every Linux, cloud, and DevOps topic. And my favorite freaking feature about Linux Academy is their course scheduler. Because I've got 3 kids, I run my own business, and I fancy myself a road tripper. So when the hell am I going to get any kind of studying done? When am I ever going to learn about new things? Well, my friends, Linux Academy has a course scheduler. You pick what you want to do, you set your time frames, and they'll help you stick to it. If you want like reminders or goals, you want to download the study guides, they'll help you do all of that. And then when you're ready to take the exam, they've got testing for that too. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there, sign up for a free 7-day trial, and support the show. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. And a big thank you to Linux. I know, right? A big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Unplugged program. Okay. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. So guys, let's do our Plasma updates. Let's do our Plasma check-in. Because I thought this would be like a big production because we made a big deal about it last week. And now that we're here, I just have a big, this is what I'm doing now. This is how I'm doing it from now on. Like, it's just sort of now my life. I don't have like a, oh man, Plasma totally failed me story. I don't have anything like that. It's just a big, this has been great. And I would say I like it better today than I did the week before and the week before that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, the 512 upgrade was solid for me, But and I think you experienced this today too.
Yeah.
When I move between machines and then I open up console, and it's been like a week since I've opened up console, and that son of a bitch opens up in the same exact place that I opened. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure do.
It opens up in West.
It's just right there.
Right where I left it. Right where my memory goes, where my muscle memory goes. It's like super small stuff like that. I mean, it's that times 1,000. I know that seems stupid and small, but if you add it up to all of the stuff, like the quadrant tiling, when I'm moving my windows around, and the way it snaps, then I can resize, it just works so damn fast and efficient. I can't even help myself.
You feel like you're coming home a little bit more. And
Yeah.
Gnome
It's
felt
like
a little,
mom's
it was
cooking.
nice, but it was more like I was using a public terminal, and I kind of spun up a new shell.
No, you know what? Here's what it is, Wes. Like, Gnome is like me living out in the city. You know, I'm out living in the city. It's clean. There's a lot of different delivery services. It's kind of got like a coldness to it. That's Gnome. That's Gnome. But like Plasma is like coming home to mom's cooking.
Get it out of here.
And it just is delicious. It just works the way I want it every time I come back to it. You know, it's just the same thing mom's been making me for the last 3 weeks. And if
cheesy goodness right there on top.
And if I haven't gotten, I'm gonna underball this. Everybody likes to exaggerate on the internet. I'm gonna underexaggerate here for a second. I've gotten 100 different tweets and telegrams and emails, and I'm underexaggerating. And I would say 8 out of 10 are switching.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple that are like not working for me. In fact, the number one thing I think I've heard, because it's about 5 of them, is they're going back to cinnamon. Cinnamon.
Interesting.
Cinnamon.
I know, right?
Okay.
I know.
I mean, I've enjoyed cinnamon a lot.
Me too.
In times,
Me
for sure.
too. Me too. It's just funny, though. It is funny, right?
Okay.
I'm not trying to laugh at them.
No,
I'm
not
not
at all, no.
I'm not. Because I've been there. But it is like a weird one. Cinnamon. Anyway.
You sent them like a mate link at the end.
So I want to go around the horn here, and I want to start with Mr. Neon Popey, because I've gotten a lot of different people interested in this, but the one I'm most curious in is, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, Popey, but I think you and I were both like Unity 7 for life before this experiment, correct?
Yeah, I'm not a distro hopper by any stretch. Like, I've used Unity for years and years, and before that I used GNOME 2. I've used Ubuntu forever, since it's existed, and before that Debian, and before that Red Hat. So we're talking a very, very long time ago. So I just don't switch distro at all, and that's not because I'm employed by Canonical, but I didn't switch before I started working at Canonical.
It's a big waste of work and time. Like, that's
right. It's getting used to new
you
stuff.
Got kids.
So I was quite happy. It's like, that whole question about why do you use what you use? It's because I like it. It's not because the competition is terrible or because other things, have awful workflows. It's just I like the workflow that I have.
Right.
So everyone else who hates it, fair enough. Use
Well
something
said.
else. I like this.
Yeah,
Right. So
well said.
I like Unity 7. So yes, I have been, Unity 7 for life, Unity 7 Master Race, and all that stuff. But you suggested KDE Neon, so I thought I'd give it a go.
Now here we are. You and I are over 2 weeks, really, and how long we've been using this, but it's a solid 2 weeks. What is your thoughts?
If you don't count the faffing around on the plane,
Yeah.
Right?
Then, yeah.
Sure. I'm still using it. I'm talking to you now from a mumble snap on KDE Neon, like I was last week. Still works. I don't even think I've rebooted since last week. I don't know. But yeah, it just works. It wakes up super fast when I open the lid, and all my windows refresh. And like you said, you open console and it opens in exactly the same place, the same size, same font size. Everything just remembered where it was.
Yep.
Everything seems to be working. I didn't have quite a smooth experience as you did with the upgrade to
really?
512. Yeah, you got it.
He went from 5.8 to 5.12.
You got it the day before I did.
Right. I went from 5.11.
No, that's not why. So you did it the day before I did, and I got it pretty soon after the next day. The problem I had was their server went down while I was midway through an upgrade, or they rebooted it, or it had an outage, or it was just let's be favourable and say it was super popular, right? Because there were lots of people joining us on this journey, and lots of people were upgrading at the same time. Could be. That's entirely plausible. And so I got network disconnections connecting to their server.
We unplugged them. Oh,
yeah. But all I did was wait a little while and restart the upgrade. It carried on fine, so no problem. And I've upgraded to 5.12, and everything seems tickety-boo.
Yeah, so they're hiding the LTS version, and my sense of it, and producer Michael, I'd like to hear your take on it because I know you've been watching the situation. Is my sense of is well, there was some bugs in the LTS version, specifically around Discover software, that we just didn't catch because nobody on the team is using it, so we don't really want to put it forward. If the LTS version is still going to exist, the repositories are still getting updated. The main difference between the LTS version and the user edition is that the LTS version ships Plasma LTS.
Right.
User edition ships current Plasma with the current Ubuntu LTS. But wasn't there some sort of issue with Discover that sort of brought all of this to a front?
It's an issue with Discover every time they make a new version.
Is there really? See, I didn't know that. Is this like a common thing?
Discover is someone who's a Plasma fan. Discover is annoying.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those. It's like one of those features that's really kind of nebulous because it's built for like the supposed new user, right? I mean,
and the Discover has like amazing ideas and concepts. It's just they're not fully flushed out yet. So like there's a lot of annoyances in that case. But as far as this goes, it's really a Discover problem. It was the main thing is that there's people not using it. The developers don't use it, so they put so little attention into it. It doesn't really make sense for them to do it. And honestly, I never thought they should have done it in the first place because it defeats the point of Neon.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're going to roll your entire stack on top of an LTS base, why make part of that stack stop rolling for some reason?
I have to say I haven't had any issues with Discover, and I almost never open it. As I mentioned last week, I installed half a dozen snaps, and I'm done. I've got every application I need on this system, and any additional libraries or command line tools, I'll use apt-get to install. The only time I've opened Discover is when I saw a notification that told me I had some updates to do, so I clicked it and Discover opened and I pressed apply and they ran, and then I closed the window and it went away, and Discover was perfectly fine.
Discover 5.12 is 10 times better than 5.11.
Oh, nice.
Really?
It's just that it's just that as some people who are using the older versions, like if you did the full upgrade from Discover 5.11 or 5.8, it might not go as smoothly, but if you use 5.12 to do any updates, it's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Like I've done updates with Discover just to test it to see if it would do like the full thing, and it most of the time works. But when it fails badly. So like that's why like it's not reliable. I would just say it's like 5.12 is so far. I just don't think people should use the super old stuff anyway. That's why I never really liked the Plasma LTS anyway. So like it's and they're not getting rid of it, right? So it's like
because they're still testing against it.
Yeah, they still use it for development. When I did the Plasma video, I had to do like some benchmarking, so that was perfect that they had it, so I could use 5.8. But other than that, I mean, I wouldn't bother with it because it's the fact that you get the stable upgrades from all the different Plasma versions is great. Like I've done multiple tests, multiple machines. Plasma never crashes on any updates from any version, so there's no reason not to just use the regular Neon.
Yeah, I actually agree, especially from like an end user standpoint. I'll tell you where I can see the purpose of an LTS version of Plasma, and that's when it comes to enterprise distros. Now, take that for a second, and then let's sort of zoom out. A lot of the people that are talking here have been using desktop Linux for longer than 15 years. So we all kind of have some standing in this area. Popey, were you going to say something?
No.
And we're all saying this is working for us. And we're all saying this seems to use less resources Despite the plasma is bloated myth, it seems to be waking from sleep faster. It seems to be more stable. It remembers my settings, and it crashes less. And like in Popey's case, he doesn't even think he's had to reboot in the last week. I don't think any of us are saying it's perfect. I don't think any of us are saying it doesn't have about 1,000 defaults you might have to change. But I think
I just checked.
Yeah?
I've got an uptime of 6 days and 13 hours. Nice. So no, I haven't updated since last week's show.
Yeah, and let me see. So this machine here that I do every single show for Jupiter Broadcasting on currently has this has an uptime of 5 days with 3 users, and I think that's only because I rebooted after I updated to 5.12 5 days ago.
And this is like a common thing I do. I tend to leave I like leaving all my windows open. I just slam the lid shut, open it up when I want to carry on, and I quite like having quite long uptimes, and I like systems that are robust that can cope with that.
This is the freaking elephant in the room, and we have to go because Ask Noah's coming up. But I got to ask you guys, so why is GNOME the desktop that's shipping on all of the enterprise distros that are going to be supported until the middle of the 2025s or whatever? What is it? Why is it not Plasma?
Legacy and branding. It's only people have known about GNOME for so long that it has the market share, it has the recognition. The whole KDE Plasma or KDE's bloated thing that's been going around for years, which has never been true at all at any point, and people just kept saying it. There was one bug in 4.2 of Plasma that made it sluggish for about 4 weeks until they replaced it with 4.3. And at that point forward, it was fine. But that one thing just created this weird onslaught of just bad reputation for KDE, bad reputation. And it doesn't make any sense other than weird legacy, weird reputation, and kind of bad branding, because KDE isn't the name of the desktop, and it's still the most common phrase we're describing the desktop. So they need to fix their branding.
I'd say probably the reason why people choose or projects have chosen GNOME is probably because there's $1 billion company behind it. Like most of the if you asked any person in the street who's behind GNOME, they'd say Red Hat. They wouldn't say a community of developers, which they might say for KDE or Plasma. They'd say there's a community. Nobody knows who Blue Systems are, or how much money they have in the bank. But Red Hat are a well-known company, long-established, well-respected company who are behind the GNOME project. So I think that's a reasonable reason why people choose GNOME.
Yeah, I think that's it, and that seems pretty reasonable to me. The only problem is that we are heading full steam ahead into GNOME. Even though a lot of us in this room who've had a lot of years doing this are saying maybe, and I think that's why we see a lot of projects like Solus and Elementary OS that are trying something a little different to try to strike that difference, and Ubuntu Mate and the Mate project itself.
I bet you it's something to do with as far as like the technical aspects. There's been a long thing of Qt. People had a problem with Qt licensing and stuff, and they didn't want to deal with that. Maybe
true.
So
that's a good point. That didn't help.
I don't know. It's not a zero-sum game. For KDE to be good, GNOME doesn't have to be bad.
Exactly.
For GNOME to be good, KDE doesn't have to be bad. They can both be good in their own right.
Absolutely, 100%.
It just happens to be that Plasma is good and GNOME is bad.
Oh, no, come on. It was so good there. We could have been the perfect ending, and then you took it from us. But I want to echo that point. I think Popey's completely right.
And it may very well be that they excel at different things, and that the mass market, perhaps GNOME works well,
right?
And KDE works better when you have a foot in the game a little bit more.
Yeah. Either way, I think a lot of us are sticking around on the Plasma desktop, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. That's going to be, I don't know. It's a big switch for a lot of us.
A new era.
It is a new era. I don't know why, but the sound interface has gone out. So do you hear anything coming out of the sound thing?
No. How about we just hum the Linux Unplugged theme as a group?
Were we not just playing a shit ton of clips?
It was like half the back half.
Was that not?
Yeah, right.
Were they not all just played over the soundboard?
That was actually you. That was you doing character voices again. You were
Right,
talking about how you weren't good at it.
The
but you
entire
really are.
damn time I was doing that. Yeah. Sorry, Beard. It's not gonna be fun. All right. Well, we're just gonna keep it tight. Well, thank you, Mumble Room. The Beard will have to put the. But you're back. All right. Well, I don't know. I wish we titled this thing because that's so awful. Like having no outro music is the worst.
It feels like we didn't even stop. There's no
I
closure
know.
on this.
I know, right? I know.
Can we play the outro music from another? There we go. All right.
I don't know why, but I seem to be unfortunately running into some caster soundboard bugs recently. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do about that. That does feel better, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does feel way better.
Woo! Thank you, Mumble Room. So help me title this thing now. Before we get out of here, we got to make room. Ask Noah's coming up in like 5 minutes.
Burning Plasma.
Church of Neon.
Oh, yeah, right!
We
Yeah.
did talk about that.
No, I think we got to do Church of Neon. That's what I wanted to do for this episode. The only thing was the Microsoft stuff, which I didn't plan for. But
I need something for Valentine's Day.
Church of Redmond.
The Church of... I don't know if I want to do that, though.
No.
Church of Neon, I feel like...
It would have been better if we had like a joke in the show about it when we prepared to do the segment.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone down at the altar.
Ambient Neon. MS under neon lights. It's all hard. Unless something really good comes
Gen
along.
2 runs Microsoft. There we go. Clickbait.
Do you know Windows PowerShell?
Do I know? No, I don't use it. No, I'm familiar with it.
Windows PowerShell.
As a title suggestion.
Yeah.
Microsoft's like a box of chocolates.
Microsoft Core.
And the value of
Especially the kind with a disgusting like feeling.
the one's always with the coconut or something.
Yeah.
Come on, Valentine's Day is tomorrow.
I know. I've tried to set reminders to keep reminding me all day long. The Church.
Don't forget to get flowers.
All right, so can we top Church of Neon? What do you think, IRC?
Valentine's Day.
Can we top Church of Neon?
Not Neon's my Valentine.
Given listeners are going to have to wait for an hour and a half to get to the Church of Neon part.
That's why I know, it really sucks. I wish I would have been more clever about that, because I know we talked about it last week, but of course I've forgotten. Microsoft's Secret? How about that?
Microsoft's Secret Valentine?
Well, I don't know if we got to put that in there, but Microsoft's Windows Secret? The secret about Windows? How about the secret about Windows?
Clickbait.
The secret of Windows.
The secret
You could
of...
spell it like the secret bracelet as
Or
well.
the secret of NIM.
The secret of Windows. The secret about Windows. How about that? The secret
That was good.
about Windows.
Well, it's not about Windows, so it's secret about Microsoft. Makes more sense.
Yeah.
The secret about Microsoft?
Yeah.
Microsoft's Secret Valentine.
Microsoft's open source secret.
The secret
Is
about
it Linux?
All right, the secret about Microsoft. I think that's a pretty good damn title, actually. That might be one of our better ones, I think. Yeah? Don't you kind of think?
It's all right.
You don't think so?
I mean, I don't hate it.
What about Microsoft's big secret?
Microsoft what's Linux?
Do we like What do you think of Microsoft's big secret?
I mean, it's definitely...
Chris hates Valentine's.
I do, actually. I do fucking hate Valentine's.
No one ever gets him a
I think
Valentine.
everybody should.
Well, I guess we got to go either way, because the
that's
Ask
true.
Noah
They
show's
gotta
coming
go
up. We got to
live.
clear out the stream. All right. Microsoft's big secret or the secret about Microsoft?
Big secret.
Okay, big secret it is. All right, I think Noah will probably be in here at some point. I don't know. He's way out in some boondocks place doing the show today, but stay tuned. The Ask Noah show is coming up. Bye, Mumble. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hugs and kisses, emoticons. Emoticons. All right, yeah, he was saying something. All right, guys, thank you for being here, too. You know what? Emoticons to you as well. I'm going to clear out the stream. The Ask Noah show is coming up in just a few moments. Say goodbye, Wes.
Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.